Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and it's already the end of February. So let me tell you about the books that I was able to read this month. So February was kind of a dud for me. It is a short month and 10 days of it were not what I expected at all, which kind of left me with very little time that I could enjoy. But I was able to read a couple of things. Some of them I really enjoyed, some not so much, but I'm happy I read them anyway. Let's get into it. So I finally finished Valette. This was the January and February read for the Bronte Project by Marissa at Blatantly Bookish. It was okay. I did not love it nearly as much as Shirley, and certainly not as much as Jane Eyre. Well, there were a couple of reasons. I could not connect with our main character. Our main character is Lucy Snow, who just has terrible luck in life, and through a variety of circumstances ends up becoming a teacher at a school in Brussels. And she tells you almost nothing about herself. She is very self-deprecating, and I've heard a lot of people say that this book deals a lot with mental health, and I can sort of see it, but I can't quite see it because Bronte is very circumspect about those aspects because it was the Victorian era. They didn't know as much about mental health as we do now, and it was very stigmatized as well, so you would try and say very little about it in published work. In addition, I could never entirely figure out what the plot was meant to be. Anytime Lucy picked up a thread and it began to develop, I would think, aha, here we go, this is going to be the main plot of the story, and then it would never entirely happen. Then we'd pick up a different thread and the same thing would happen with about 3 or 4 plot threads. I could, however, connect to a lot of what Lucy said about teaching and how terrifying it is, how difficult it is, how difficult it can be developing relations with your fellow teachers, and how other teachers see your work as opposed to their work, which shouldn't be the case, but it often is. How you deal with your most difficult students. Some of what Lucy does to deal with her most difficult students I could not get away with in my classroom, but it is rather amusing to think about. So overall, I'm glad I read it, but this was not my favorite, nor will it be one that I will be keeping on my shelves. Once I finished that, I picked up The Confessions of Fanny Langdon by Sarah Collins, which is the story of Fanny Langdon, who is in jail for supposedly killing her master and her mistress in a British household, but she cannot remember whether or not she did it. And so she is writing out her confessions to her defense lawyer to see if they can piece together what actually happened. And so you follow her life from working as a slave on a plantation in Jamaica to being brought to Britain and being given to her new master and mistress, as well as the relationship that begins to develop between herself and her mistress. This book is absolutely wonderful. It is hard-hitting in all the right places, but it is so well worth it. The writing is beautiful. The topics it explores are both relevant and complicated. It explores the complexities of things that we are still dealing with today, precisely because they are so complex, and I loved that it broke down all those different angles that need to be addressed. It is truly well worth it. It's been all over BookTube, so you may have read it already, but if you haven't, I would highly encourage you to pick it up. Next, when I needed some comfort in my life and just a slow, quiet read, I picked up Anne of Ingleside by L.M. Montgomery. This is book number 6 in the Anne of Green Gables series. So I can't tell you too much about what happens, except for the fact that it is about Anne and her family as they grow into their life in the town of Ingleside. This is a very slow read. It's told in a lot of vignettes, things that happen to Anne or to her children, and those adventures will take a chapter or two to tell. And a lot of people might complain that there isn't a lot of overall plot and that it's too goody two-shoes, but I would argue that once you know and love Anne, it's like dropping in for a visit and hearing about what her family's been up to that week. So I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the last 2 books in the series. I also got into a webcomic this month. Again, it was started 2 years ago, so I am rather late to the party, but that webcomic is Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. It is a beautiful webcomic. I read the entirety of season 1 this month, which is what I am counting here. Season 2 is currently being published, and I am keeping up with that as well. This webcomic tells the story of Hades and Persephone from Greek mythology, as well as mixing in stories from a variety of other Greek myths involving, for example, Eros and Psyche, and Zeus's many adventures, and Rhea and Kronos, but it also tackles a lot of modern topics as well, such as consent and rape and mental health and childhood trauma. And it covers them all in a really beautiful way. I found the art style really beautiful. It's just very engaging. So if you haven't checked it out yet, I would highly encourage you to check it out. Finally, the last book that I read in February, or at least that I hope to have finished in February, is Black Tutors by Miranda Kaufman. I am currently in the middle of this. I have read about 100 pages so far. There we are. There are 274 pages to the main book. I'm filming this on Saturday, so I do still have today and tomorrow to finish it. But I can tell you about what I have read of it so far. So this is a history of Black tutors. It is the history of people of color that we know of, that we have documentation for in Tudor England, and trying to piece together the stories of their lives, how they came to be in Britain, what happened to them while they were there, was there a particular significant event for them, how might their lives have been? Which on the surface sounds wonderful, and these are history books that need to be written. However, I'm not enjoying this particular one as much simply because of the way that it is being told. I'm finding it very slow going because we don't have a lot of documentation from Tudor Britain to start with, especially for people of color who would have been relatively low class, so it's not like we have their diaries preserved. Would they have even been able to read and write, as many lower class people would not have been? So there's a lot of speculation involved in terms of trying to piece a vision of their lives together. And in order to flesh out the story, Kaufman also ends up telling you a lot of filler background knowledge about the Tudor period in general, which could be really interesting if you don't know much about the Tudor period, but I have loved the Tudor period since I was 7 or 8 years old, so a lot of that background information I already do know. That and her writing is tending to get rather formulaic, especially in terms of her chapter endings, and trying to link the story of one person to another person. She uses the same metaphor every time in order to make that link, and it's getting kind of tiring. So overall, this is going to be another book that I'm glad I have read and is a book worth publishing, but not one that I would look forward to reading again. So there you have it. That was everything that I have managed to read in February. Let me know down below if you have more questions about any of these books or what your favorite read of the month was. I always love to hear from you all, and until next time, be safe, be well, and happy reading. Bye everyone.